Mel Show, which is a podcast or vodcast that I did about 2 years ago, where I talk about a little bit more than just gaming or just minis and things like that. So I thought today would be a good day to bring it back to discuss a few things that have been going on across, let's just say, the geek spectrum. First thing I'd like to discuss is a little bit about what's new here with the channel. We got an FDM, well, I got an FDM printer, which is an extrusion printer. And that prints out in extruded plastic, so I have PLA. And it's good for prototyping and building, let's just say, printing out miniatures or models really specifically that you want to be able to use and that have quite a bit of durability to them. This is going to be used for some of the more sciencey and engineering kind of things that I like to do, like building things with gears and things like that. So you can look for more content on that, and of course, content on the printer and what I think about that in the coming weeks. Also, redid the kind of printing station for the workshop, so now I have a more organized flow. I have the UV printer. I have my ultrasonic bath, which is used to clean some of the harder to, some of the minis and some of the electronics and things that I'll be using in the future, as well as my FDM printer, as well as the resin. So I'm happy with it. It flows better. It looks so much cleaner, and I'm extraordinarily excited to begin working again on that. That being said, we're going to get back into some topics a bit. So I'm going to start off with actually a little bit of video gaming first. For those of you that now, mostly I'm going to cover games that I play and games that I'm interested in. So just be aware of that. Big thing coming up is the new patch for Outriders, which, let's just say, had one of the rockier launches of any video game recently. And I think it's still a fairly popular game. Actually, I'm not saying I think. I know it's still a fairly popular game. It's still got a pretty good following. And the devs have been pretty transparent from People Can Fly with telling us what they want to address, how they're going to address the problems. They've been listening to the community, and while there are a number of issues going on, it looks like the biggest issue, which is the disappearing inventory issue, has been largely corrected. And again, haven't really heard a lot about that in about a week. So it looks like the last thing that they did, which was a combination of a patch and some stuff server side, seems to have addressed that problem. So that's a good thing. However, there is the issue of people being somewhat toxic when you go in there by kicking people out before they can collect their loot. That came up. But I know that there are plans to address all of these issues within the coming weeks. I know this week we should be getting a large patch that will address some of the other issues, and then we can look towards restoration for people who lost items, as well as the basically thank you package or the apology package, whatever you want to call it, for anybody that has played since the game launched, or that had played it for a period of time since the game launched. I think it was like a week or two, where if you played, they're sending you an appreciation package, which includes, as of at least when they made the announcement, an exotic or legendary piece of gear. We don't know if it's a gear or a weapon or whatnot. Some titanium, and there was something else. And an emote called Frustration, which is kind of ironic. So that's they're taking the right steps. I know people are frustrated. I do think they should have released the game as early access, which would have made this a lot less infuriating for people, because when you do a full release of a game, people do expect the game to work sort of along the lines. I mean, granted, I will say this game was not nearly in the state that Wolcen was when it launched. And there's really more in line with those games than you would think because, for the most part, as I said, I view Outriders more as like, and I'm not the only one, more as like a 3D Diablo 3 style game where you're looting to build specific builds and then push into the end game further and further to get the gear that you want to finish your builds or collect other things that you're looking to collect, which is very much an action RPG thing. It's a looter shooter that really pays tribute to its action RPG roots, which is a great thing. Now, segueing into action RPGs, 2 weeks ago, Blizzard had their technical test for Diablo 2. And to say that Diablo 2's technical test or technical alpha was very well polished would be a bit of an understatement. With the exception of a few bugs people ran into here and there, I ran into one bug during the entire, I would say, 20-ish or almost 30-ish hours I played of it that weekend, which was really went from, like Thursday to Sunday. So it wasn't like 2 days, it was over 4 days. I really did jump into the game, played through it, really got into some of the systems, looked at the differences because there are some huge differences from where it was originally 20-ish years ago to where it is now. And it really is a tremendous improvement in terms of graphics but it still holds true to the same game. It's still the same game. It's still the same things you remember from Diablo 2 with a couple of quality of life upgrades to some of the stash systems, I think, and that sort of thing. It was a lot of fun to get in there. And with the exception of literally one bug, which I can barely remember what it was at this point, um, it was very smooth. They had the first two acts up there. You could see the beautiful changes to graphics that Vicarious Visions has made to the game. And it looks, I would not be surprised if there was another test, probably maybe a closed test, and then this was closer to being released then, because it certainly feels that it's fairly close to release based upon the state I saw it. And I'm going to be honest, this game's technical alpha for Diablo 2 Resurrected certainly felt a lot better than other games, full releases, Outriders being a perfect example of that. So let's call it what it is. And then I really kind of want to jump onto the other thing that came up as I was kind of going through things in gaming, and that is Path of Exile. Path of Exile has launched their Ultimatum League, and I've been playing Path for a couple of years now, 3-ish years, and I was debating about Ultimatum because they did do, I felt, more of a nerf bat to a lot of the builds that were out there rather than evenly kind of distributing things. And so I really wasn't 100% keen on playing. However, I did take time to tune into a few of my favorite action RPG streamers and was basically watching people sit in a login queue. Now, this was a unforeseen issue that Grinding Gear Games, the developers of Path, had because of a change to the way they logged in. They did do some load testing, a tremendous amount of load testing, but there were some changes that they made to try to improve certain things about logging in that caused the problem. And then, of course, they didn't really anticipate that. And on top of that, they did something which really doubly pissed off the community, which was give streamers an obvious streamer queue, a way to cut into the line. And that caused a tremendous uproar. To a very large extent, probably the biggest backlash I think people have seen. And I would say the reason I think this happened was they spent a lot of money paying streamers who normally wouldn't play it. People like Shroud, who are not typically action RPG streamers, but these are people with a lot of influence as far as having a large audience. They paid them a decent amount of money to play, and rather than, as Chris Wilson, the director of Grinding Gear Games, said, it would have been basically like lighting money on fire if they didn't give certain people that they had already prepaid for uh, a queue to play the, basically a way to skirt the line and play. Which, from a business standpoint, I can understand. Still, it is kind of one of those things you don't want to do, because the biggest draw for people playing, and including the streamers, people like that mods and such, for playing the game, is that everybody got to play at the same time, because it is a matter of there is always an unofficial race to get to certain levels first, to get to do things like labs first. And when people don't get to start at the same time, that really does create a problem. And it really was a PR nightmare for Grinding Gear Games. It took them pretty much one entire day to get this issue completely fixed. And at that, they always have issues at launch. And I think the straw that broke the camel's back was this is the worst launch that they've had, period, for any league that they've put out, which is a league is a season for those of you that are unfamiliar. And really, the entire thing of the obvious streamer queue that was out there and the admission of such really, really damaged their image to a large extent, especially with their, within their community. And, in general, in terms of us gamers, it's a bit of a shitty thing to do. And while I understand it from a business perspective, that doesn't mean I like it. So that's another thing that was a big thing that happened. And I guess the bigger thing that I want to talk about is really kind of more of a topical thing. This week is the thing I saw this morning, which was a GIF, not a GIF. It was just a JPEG showing toxic, over-competitive players, basically. Let's use the word dumping all over the people who were playing just for fun in certain games. And really there was a quote by Ninja, which I won't go into, talking about, if you're not playing competitively, then GTFO. Here's the thing. And as somebody that has pretty much been around since the dawn of home gaming, and who is somebody that always appreciates somebody wanting to improve, you can play to be competitive and also not be a raging jackass. It's not mutually exclusive, okay? It doesn't mean that, hey, I want to be competitive. And I'm saying this is somebody that was competitive in the rating scene for a while. Somebody that was also very... Listen, I'll admit my past when I was in my 20s, some 20 years ago. Yeah, sure, I would get mad if people fucked up, and I would yell at people and rage at people. But then there was a point where some people basically brought it to my attention that I was making the game not fun for them. And people do pay for their games just like you do. And really, to be honest, this is kind of more of the toxicity that goes on with just being on the internet and having a sense of anonymity. In the past, people would not say things like they say because they would get the shit beat out of them. And I'm being perfectly blunt. I know that this is, violence, whatever. I'm not a proponent of violence. But at the same point, you would keep your mouth shut and have respect for other people on the basis that, yeah, one, it's the right thing to do. And two, if you said something to the wrong person, you never know who's going to punch you right in the nose. So... watching people sit there and scream and shout because, oh, I'm a streamer or I'm a YouTube player. You're great. You're good at a video game. That's wonderful. It doesn't really say a lot about you as a person. Again, the adage of what if the power goes out, you're probably going to be the first person to get murdered and have their shit taken. And again, I say this out of kind of jest, but I mean, the truth is, it's great to be good at a video game, but that doesn't mean you have to be a complete and total jackass about it. You know, I get it if you're playing competitive and somebody else is venturing in there. Hey, everybody starts somewhere. You're just because you're competitive doesn't mean the first time you played a game you were horrible at it. Let's be honest. Most people are. Most people have to get to know the game, and your first match didn't go. Still, you weren't like, I'm a born natural at this. Let's be honest. You were just as good as everybody else, which is probably pretty bad at the start. You know, and you worked at it and you got better, and that's how you're supposed to do it. If you want to improve, it's not by taking down somebody, tying them to, like, I remember a friend of mine was said to me once, "Hey, I'm going to go relax and play a game of League of Legends." And then he came back to me literally 2 minutes later and said, "Well, I was in the game for 30 seconds and it took that long for somebody to tell me that I should go and die and that I should never have been born." And I was like, "Yep, that's toxic competitiveness." And there's no reason for that. Just because I can understand one thing. If you're playing a competitive game and you want to play and you want to improve and you want people to play it, great, yes. And I understand, believe me, if you're playing in the like a ranked mode or like a tournament mode, you don't want some Joe Schmo in there. But at the same point, if you're playing in basically a public pickup match, shut the fuck up. And I'm saying this nicely. Shut the fuck up about complaining about your teammates. Because let me tell you something. If you want to play competitive, go play in your ranked matches. Don't go into pubs and then bitch about everybody that's playing there because they're not so good. Because if you're not communicating in a game that has an open mic, you're just as much a part of the problem as the other people are. So, really, that's the point. I get. And I just want to make it because games are supposed to be fun. They're supposed to be for you to have fun with, other people to enjoy. And if you're going to be a toxic shitbag to somebody else, don't, just rethink that. Don't stress yourself out. If you are getting stressed playing a video game, maybe you need to rethink why you're doing this in the first place. Because I have news for you. You're never going to be the best. And it's not like a knock at anybody, because the truth of the matter is there is always somebody better out there. Strive to be your best personally, but don't if you find yourself in the middle of a public match and it's not going your way because there's things not going on with your teammates, also look at yourself. If you're not communicating, you're part of the problem. You can't expect somebody to know what's going on up here because nobody else is fucking psychic. So get it out of your mind. And yeah, I one thing, yes, this is an adult themed channel, so I'm gonna swear and I'm not gonna hold back on things because, to be honest, it's the truth. If you're not gonna be a part of the solution, then you're part of the problem, and that's the honest to God truth. And that's my opinion on it. But I mean, to be honest, that's also just pure and simple logic. And if you can't understand logic, then maybe you're not as big brain as you think you are. Just pointing that out there. The other thing I really want to kind of drop and change gears for a minute is going into now the entire situation that happened with Games Workshop within the last 2 weeks. Basically about a few weeks ago, let's say about 6 weeks ago, they dropped the Cursed City news on us, which is the latest in their Warhammer Quest board game series. And there was a lot of marketing put out saying how this would be available for pre-order and we could get it at the stores and it's going to, and of course the history of the Warhammer Quest board games is that they've traditionally been available pretty much for like a few months after their launch where they're still in print. And everybody was looking forward to it. I mean, the models that they released and all the review copies that they sent out to content creators and such to kind of help build hype for this and get people online to pre-order came to the pre-order Saturday 2 weeks ago. Everybody got online to order, and pre-orders, of course, ran out. I was lucky enough to get my pre-order in. before the 15 minutes or so before it ran out, and got my copy. Of course, there were some shipping delays, but between Brexit and COVID, we can understand why. However, it was not until the next Monday, which was, we talk about pre-orders on a Saturday. On Monday, we found out that all of a sudden this was a limited release item, and a lot of the marketing that had been released had been mysteriously pulled down. And the official word from GW was that this was now a limited release item and would not be appearing online again. And you were now directed to your local game store where they would likely have copies. Well, again, not so much. So that also became an issue, and it brought up something as to one of the practices that's been going on with GW, and they are kind of now doing what I would consider targeted releases. Like, they take pre-orders for certain things, but they only take them for a certain amount of time, which I can understand. But we don't know whether or not that's an item that's going to come back in stock. We don't know when it's going to come back in stock, and we don't know if it's going to be something that's going to be print to demand, available, after pre-orders, or if it's going to be limited release. Because again, this is not the first time this situation has happened with them. And now that puts the local game stores under, basically, like, if they don't have enough, they're not going to get any more back in. And now people are going to be upset with the local game stores, and not even to a small extent content creators. They don't tell us, those of us who are, maybe get the marketing, the review copies, they don't tell any of the review copy, people, hey, this is a limited release. So we make content, it gets put out online, and we think that's it. But again, that also has the ability to destroy the confidence people have in their favorite content creators. If they're getting these things and making content about that, it doesn't send a good message. And I've covered this in another video, so I'm not going to go on about it. But this is something that needs to change. If they want to release things and want to have a limited release, they need to do a really kind of follow the example that Wizards of the Coast set up, which I'll cover them in a few moments, with their secret layers. Let people know a month or two in advance, hey, we're going to be doing this. It's going to be available for a day or two, and that's it. After that, it's a print-to-demand item. After that, it will not be available. Fine, people have a chance to save. But if you're not going to do it that way, and you're just going to drop these surprises on people, you're going to lose a lot of business. I'm just saying, somebody needs to kind of get their head screwed on at GW. And that's where I'm going to leave that one. Let you guys give me some additional feedback on it. And the other thing, again, I want to now swing over to is Wizards of the Coast, because they're another company that has been, now this is not really about the secret layers. Secret layers are Wizards, flat out at, saying, hey, we're releasing these unique versions of cards that are only available here. You could buy it here, and that's it. And I mean, yes, a store can buy it, but everybody's paying the same price for it. So you're going to go on, you're going to order it. That's really it. I mean, there's no two ways about that. And that's not really in line with supporting local game stores. Obviously, if you can get something only online, not helping your favorite local game store. Now, my problem with Wizards really stems from going back to Jumpstart. Now, I can understand Jumpstart coming out during COVID, having some problems with shipping product, but Jumpstart was something that we were promised we would get, more of. And I really, in agreement with a number of online content creators, do not feel that that's the way it's going to be. And from what I've heard from distributors and other, game store owners, they're just not getting the product. Well, I was kind of hoping that would be like a one-time occurrence, but as it's come to be, I've seen that Time Spiral Remastered, which was supposed to be another widely available product, was really cut short, not delivered in any of the quantities to the local game stores, as far as I can tell. In meaningful quantities, they did not get what the allocation should have been for them, even though it was a special release set. These are things that should be available at your local game store, and instead, these are showing up in quantity on Amazon, which again is being directly handled between Wizards and Amazon, which again shows where their heart really lies. And if you really want an example, um, then all we have to do is look back towards this past weekend, 2 days ago, with the relaunch of Strixhaven, which they've changed the way they do releases. Now, Strixhaven on pre-release weekend, you can no longer buy booster boxes or pick up your pre-ordered booster boxes. Only set booster boxes are available. And at that point, they did not even send the distributors any meaningful numbers of Strixhaven booster boxes for release weekend. So now, stores didn't have the product, people couldn't buy the product, and now we have to wait till Wizards gets the product out to us. Now, you can't even say anything about, well, this is COVID related, because again, these are showing up on, and I'm not talking about just, like even your bigger online stores. I'm not talking Amazon, the ones that specialize in this, your Card Kingdoms and your Star City Games. They're having problems as well. Getting all this stuff because they all get them from the same distributors. And of course, a lot of these I feel are going to show up on Amazon. People are going to be getting their product off of Amazon. And this is something going on, which again is more anti-consumerism. And these are things where I feel that we need to hold these companies, to task. We need to take them to task as far as it goes. Like, if you're not going to sell us the product that we want, then maybe we're not going to buy it from the places you want us to buy it from. If you don't buy it through Amazon and then they have to dump the product back into distributors to the local game stores, then so be it. I would rather buy it from a local game store and give them, $10 more per case. Like I'm talking about, like a lot of times, or maybe the same price. I'd rather support a local game store than Amazon, to be honest. Amazon is great for things that I can't readily, get at, the next day, perhaps. But I'd much rather support local businesses than Amazon at any given point during the day. So just putting that out there, maybe Wizards, you need to do a better job with actually taking care of the companies and the businesses that actually built your company up, rather than, sucking onto Amazon. But, it is what it is. I just feel bad that more people can't get the product, myself included. And a lot of people are not getting the product. And I've heard from game store owners that I'm friends with that, hey, this is a problem. And it is a problem because these people rely on this money to come in. New release weekends and pre-release weekends are where most of the income from these items gets made, and where they really take care of things like rent and utilities for maybe a couple of months. So it's something that needs to be, if you really want to quote unquote care about your local game stores, Wizards, get your act together and get the product to where it needs to be, so that the customer, the people who ultimately buy your product, is satisfied. But there's my kind of 2 cents on that. I've always been an advocate for consumers. And again, that's why things like, when it comes to video games, early access, all of these things need to be taken into account. At any rate, I've hoped you enjoyed this episode of The Mel Show. I will be back with some interviews along the way and some hot takes along the way. As always, most of the things represented here are my opinions and mine alone. I am not speaking on behalf of any company. But I do hope that you all have a wonderful week. Also, next week is GW's whole GW of online event week. I know pre-orders return on May 8th, so I would look forward to that. And as always, if you like what you see here, hit the like button if you want to keep up to date and keep coming back for new videos. Hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification button to see when new episodes go live. Feel free to follow me on Twitter at Melkendor or on Instagram for my hobby builds at Melk's Workshop. And feel free to follow me on TikTok, also at Melkendor. And I think that's really it for social media. And I stream live on Twitch. So twitch.tv/Melkendor. That will be during the week, usually in the evenings. We do some hobby stuff. I will have some build videos coming up. I know I've been doing a lot of these, but to be honest, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, which I feel like you guys need an update on, or more specifically, somebody to kind of put things in perspective on occasion and give my own feedback as a longtime gamer and really kind of a fan of being a fan. That being said, listen, I hope you have a great week. Stay safe out there. I know everybody should be able to get their shots this week, so if you do get your shot, awesome. Hopefully we'll be able to get back and play games together again in person soon. And with that being said, it's been my pleasure to host for you and to present you with everything going on. I hope you have a wonderful day, wonderful week, and as always, Mel out.